I'm not gonna be able to show my name.
Oh, you are, oh, that's why I came, I thought we, in all the plugging in, I thought we turned that on. Sorry.
That's okay. Like, wait.
Now the projector is out.
Oh, no, it's like, hey, I thought you wanted me off.
Yeah. It'll take about half an hour and then.
That's right. That's okay, we can just tell them we're having technical difficulties.
There we go. Ooh. Oh. Perfect. So check check the. I think the agenda is in this slide. I think you can post it there. You'll want to look at the different window for. Let's plop it in here. Well, while you're somewhere else, I'll click the create button, the right hand corner, go live. And then. Oh, yeah, and underneath customization. Want to do redirect. It's just got it from. Okay. So this is kind of what's happening in Parker too. And I tested the internet speed with Parker, they're fine, but Zoom was still giving the warning. Oh, but now this is. So. Yeah, it seems to be fluctuating. I wonder if this is a Zoom issue because. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that Ethernet port doesn't show anything. That plugs in for yeah. this already?
Last time we gave it, but,
All right, so Nada. And so now you want to go back to the production schedule, the context of logins. And we're sending this to 1085. So you want to divide 1085. Oh, but you have to first get that string of numbers. That's in that. Yes. Cool. Now, close that somewhere in the video. And that's the tape. Certain find like somewhere on there. Yeah.
like where, yeah.
Stuff a little bit. Full screen. Cool. And then you can just close that down. Sweet. That's it. We're in good shape. You can you can send an email right now. Yeah. Cool. So if people are watching
stop the
Now,
Let us know when we are on. We're on. Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Hanover Select Board meeting of, believe it or not, November 1st, 2021. Here tonight to have some fun and do good work for the town. And our first order of business is public comment. David.
My name is David Vincelette. I'm here because I have an obligation as a retired Army veteran officer to bring notice to the public that this board has violated civil rights of its own citizens. 16 years ago, I discovered they were dumping asphalt waste and coal tar into town roads, and I began trying to stop the program. It took me 13 years to stop it. Now it's stopped. During the time, they were dumping asphalt waste with the college, with Dartmouth College, and other private contractors were allowing their waste to be dumped into the water where my children swim, play, and drink. And other town people swim at Stores Pond, Grass Road, Washington, into the brook where people swim. Because
You're gonna have to turn it off because they're not gonna be able to hear you on the mic.
Oh, there you go.
she was a year old when Julie was hired.
David, let me just interrupt you for a second. We're going to allocate 3 more minutes for this, please.
My daughter Catherine was a year old. Julie Griffin was hired to come and work for the town. During the proceeding, during the years after that, Julie allowed the highway department to dump asphalt waste and coal tar and abused my family was trying to stop. At one point, this board authorized a fence to be put around our property. The fence blocked our driveway and fire for 25 months. So I went to court and had it taken down. I guess I didn't lose that one, did I? Now this board has hidden the fact that many people living down by the brook were made to live off the brook water. We were shut down so that we had to pull water from the brook to survive. I called the police, called the fire department. They all refused to investigate. When I called them about the water being polluted, they said they wouldn't even send police to investigate. It's a crime. It's RSA 146. You're not allowed to put asphalt waste into state waters. This town has hidden what was done from the public. Held human beings hostage for 25 months, a violation of their civil rights, violation of the constitutional rights, and the police department still refuses to investigate. This week, Captain Martin came down. I won't say Astelero, but that's not the right pronunciation. They came down this week and again refused to gather evidence of the crimes that this town has committed. Eventually, it's going to come out. But it's my duty to keep telling the public that this board is comprised of felons. Every one of you is a felon. You've all conspired with the college to dump poison and then to hurt people who stick up to stop it. At some point, you all need to stand up and get thrown out. You're still under the banner.
David, you have 30 more seconds. David?
Don't interrupt me.
Yes, I will
You're still
interrupt
under
you.
the banner of
David,
Dartmouth
you have 30
College.
more seconds.
Good for you. You're still under the banner of Dartmouth College, and you still have the banner on your agenda. You still have Town of Hanover Baker Tower Library with Indian on top. Town stole the land of the Native Americans. The college betrayed the Native Americans, committed fraud, and took the money, and has $8 billion in the bank. They're allowed to poison the water, and you allow it.
Don't forget your mask, please.
Thank you.
Okay. The next order of business is the review of the 5-year financial projections for FY 22, 23. This is the beginning of our, very beginning of our budgetary process, where we historically have gotten an overview of where we are financially and what the projections look like going forward for 5 years. And the objective is to inform the board prior to us setting some form of objectives, budget objectives in the next time we meet. So this is the first of many, many sessions, and the objective tonight is just to get information that will inform us of how we set our budget targets and guidelines going forward. And I see we have, Tina, before we introduce you, you introduce yourself. I see we have Mac and Kari in the background. Thank you for being here.
And Herschel.
Yes.
Our newest finance committee member.
Excellent. Thank you. Welcome. And just to reiterate, we've had tremendous cooperation with the finance department and you in particular, Kari, and we appreciate all the work you've done. I thought last year's back and forth was very productive.
They're officially a committee, not a
Right,
department. I just wanted to
Oh,
clarify that.
Committee. I'm
They've
sorry.
been promoted.
Did I upgrade you, I hope?
Yeah, she'll be looking for a raise. That's what I wanted.
But anyway, just again, thank you for all of your efforts last year, and we look forward to your input again this year. So Tina, introduce yourself.
Good evening. I'm Tina Stearns. I'm the new finance director for the town of Hanover. So bear with me. I've got the numbers and Julia has been a tremendous help along with my whole department. So I'm looking forward to this budget season and many more come.
Great.
Hey, welcome.
Thank you.
Do you want to kick us off, Julia? Or?
Yeah, I will. And what I did this year, I took a little bit of liberty with only a slight departure from Betsy's approach, Peter, in the past, which is to provide a little bit more of an overview in the memo, which is attached to your Friday packets and which was posted on the website. I guess we had a link problem in the early hours, but that got fixed. Walking the board through our thinking, and Tina and I, as we talked about this, you know, there's a fair amount of uncertainty, I think is probably an understatement going into this next fiscal year, given the pandemic economic impacts. And as a result, we felt it was important to just outline for the board some of the things that we're concerned about or worrying about as you approach your thinking about both next year's projections, but also the 5-year projections. And so on page 1 of your memo, I've outlined some of those concerns. I think just to give the public the benefit of a little bit of background, it's clear that we are seeing as employers and as communities a fairly significant number of pandemic impacts. There's an impact in the lack of available workers. There's an impact in terms of the current rate of inflation. There is an impact in the availability of goods and services, goods in particular with supply chain problems, but quite frankly, it's really difficult to schedule services too, because firms can't find enough employees. So whether you're talking about tradespeople, or you're talking about consulting services, or you're talking about manufacturers, everybody is experiencing the impacts of both the supply chain problems and the lack of available workforce. And that's really at this point driving up costs. It's creating delays in all sorts of processes we engage in as the town, and makes planning, particularly project planning, difficult because you just can't peg anticipated costs at this point. It's you're better off just holding off on doing certain things because the inputs and the service prices are unusually high. In talking with our legislative representatives at both the New Hampshire Municipal Association and also the National League of Cities, we've all been waiting with bated breath for Congress to finalize the proposals, both with respect to the infrastructure bill and with the Build Back Better program. And it's no clearer today than it was a month ago what the Senate is going to do. So we have a fair amount of opportunity as a municipality riding on what may come out of these legislative packages, and are reluctant to plan for alternative capital projects because we want to be ready to hit the ground running if the opportunity arises through federal funding, but nobody knows for sure at this point. So as we think about planning capital improvement programs for next year, you'll find us typically feeling as if we're sitting on the fence with some concern about what's prudent to move forward on and what's not, given the potential availability of funds for things like broadband deployment, for example, or for water and wastewater infrastructure projects. The CPI, Northeast Urban Index Size BC communities, which we use as our sort of tracker, was at a high of 5.2% for the month of September. Largely driven by goods prices, oil, fuel costs in particular. Everything I read, Peter, tells me that the Fed is believing that that's likely unusually high and will more typically trend to the low 2% range starting in 2022, but that's out there as just a question mark, which gives us some pause. And then we just today got the results. Norm Bernache has finally been able to finalize the total assessed valuation for the town. We've been waiting for that information, and we'll walk you through that here as we go through our presentation. But for my last page here, folks, hold on one second. So the new net valuation has increased from $2,300,746,000 to $2,679,244,000. So we're looking at an overall decrease in the tax rate of 11.28%. Off of the 2020 tax rate based, and this is the blended rate for fire districts 1, 2, and 3, plus the general fund, based on this total increase in net valuation. That's good news, but some people will see their taxes actually go up rather than go down, depending on the extent of increase in their valuation through the reval. So we'll be finalizing the MS1 for DRA tomorrow. Norm will actually be bringing the MS1 or getting 3 of you to sign it tomorrow if he can find you, because we need to get that signed by 3 select board members and into DRA ASAP so that we can get the tax rate set, so we can get tax bills out. Obviously, we want to see how that all lands in the context of what we're moving forward with the budget proposal.
You need that tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll talk to you at the end of the meeting tonight to see who's going to be where.
I'm in town in the morning, so that's
he's-
helpful.
He's willing to come find people to just get your John Hancock's. It's literally, it requires the select board signatures. My signature doesn't suffice for DRA for the MS1. So, but that valuation was literally just finalized today. Norm wanted to wait until he had a chance to do any and all informal meetings with individuals, which the deadline was last Friday. So we're working on that. But suffice it to say, there's just a fair amount of uncertainty that we're looking at, and a period of time when these economic recovery could go in one of 2 directions, continue to go up or go down. depending upon a number of moving targets that we just don't feel confident we can track with any degree of assurance at this point.
I hate to go aside, but.
Yeah.
So Norm has completed his second round of informal comments based upon the recent
Mailings.
submission. And can you give us a flavor of what that second round was like?
So on average, residential values increased in the 19% range. Commercial values increased in the 15% range overall. So there was a higher increase in value overall of residential property values than there was in commercial property values, which quite frankly wasn't surprising to me, Peter, given the impact of the pandemic.
My question really was to, what was the public feedback? Was
Sorry.
there a second round of interviews? 100 people, 200 people?
Not even 100. It was actually quite quiet, and the staff had no problem in fitting everybody into a review schedule based on their request to meet over Zoom or on the phone to talk with Norm and Adrian. I can get the exact numbers for the board, but it was better than they expected. It was fairly quiet, which is always a good sign, because we had definitely had more. There were well over 200 face-to-face or Zoom meetings that we held back in the August-September timeframe before they did the relook, Peter. So that tells us that with the revisit, fewer people were concerned about the results than they were after the first set of values went out in August, early August. So it was a relatively manageable group of size of a group that came out to seek interactions in the last 2 weeks since the mailing went out.
Thank you.
Yep. So once the MS1 is submitted, the tax rate is set, and then it's all about anybody who continues to have concerns over their value files an appeal. And those deadlines, that deadline is March 1st. So you tend to see some things come in quickly and others sort of trickle in over time, but folks have essentially 4 months to submit their requests for abatement. So that then goes to the Board of Assessors.
Thank you.
Yep. So as we looked at our projections going out for the next 5 years, we factored in, and Tina will walk you through the projections right here on the board, but we factored in a number of assumptions in developing these 5-year projections. We assumed a cost of living adjustment on top of the annual step increase of 2%. And we use that number in the out years as well. We assumed that we know we have a guaranteed maximum price health insurance premium increase of 6.2% effective next July 1. That's the guaranteed maximum. That typically comes down by some few tenths of a percent between now and next April when they'll inform us of our final. And we're using 6% in the out years for our projections. Quite frankly, Peter, over the last 5 years, last year was in that range, and this year projected at 6.2%, but we've also had 3 years prior to that of very low increases. So 6% may be too high, but we err on the side of being conservative with these projections. So we felt safe in using the 6%. It's important to remind the community that the New Hampshire retirement system hands out employer mandated retirement system contribution increases every 2 years. We had our last increase last July 1. So we're in the first fiscal year of that increase now. Our next increase will be a year from this coming July, so July of 23. So what we'll be budgeting for next fiscal year is no change from what we're budgeting for this year. I am somewhat optimistic on the retirement system contribution side in that if anybody saw the news, the New Hampshire retirement system had a banner year in their investment proceeds. And knowing from having served on the NHRS board, I know that the actuaries will be doing an assessment of the retirement system over the course of the next 6 months. prescribe a rate increase for the retirement system board next fall. And we then, as communities, will hear about it next fall for a July 1, 2023 increase. But because the retirement system had a pretty good year, maybe that will take some pressure off the increase for FY 23 and 24. In terms of other operating costs, this is a typo here, Tina, road maintenance, paving and reconstruction incremented by 0x% for all projected years. So I don't know what we use for road paving. I obviously forgot to fill that in when I was updating the memo, but
I think it's on the other.
was it on your copy of the memo? Same with fuel and electricity.
Could I just step in a little bit? In my packet, I did not see the spreadsheet that goes out 5 years.
Yeah, so you're about to, that's it right there, Peter.
No, that's not it.
No, sorry, and Tina's got it,
Okay. so we're
right?
gonna
It's
see
the
that as a part of
5-year
this meeting?
projection. Tina, you've got that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, so we're gonna see that as a part of this. meeting.
right, correct. Yep. Yes, we were still working on that on Friday, partly waiting for final information from Norm.
I actually have that on maintenance at 0%
Okay.
projected out.
And I think that came from Pete Kobacki, and I'm trying to remember what his assumptions were. Yeah, I'm not sure that's accurate, guys. That may have been my fault for not checking back in with Pete on that number. Fuel and electricity, the 0%, and the reason is, as our solar panels come online, we're seeing pretty optimistic outcome projections on the electricity side, which would offset any increase in fuel. Because we're going to be generating almost all of our electricity from our solar fields. So overall 0 on the fuel and electricity side. The big question mark there is what's going to happen with oil prices. If those continue to go through the roof, we'd have to revisit those projections, but it's anybody's guess at this point. Hanover ambulance service, we're incrementing it by 4%, which is typically a COLA of 2% plus a step of 2%. So it's the salary impacts. The other piece that we weren't able to predict is what we'll see increase on the New Hampshire retirement system contribution side for our firefighters. We build that through to the rates that we assess Lyme, Norwich, and Hanover through the general fund ambulance allocation cost. And then the other operating costs we've increased by 2.3%, looking at the COLA projections for the next 3 years from the Fed. I've given you an update on the debt service. We've got a couple of bonds that are going to be expiring here, paid off in the next 2 or 3 years. So that's going to open up some fairly significant expenditure capacity for us, or reduction in tax rate. The RWB Community and Senior Center bond expires in 22-23, so next fiscal year will be the last
What is that
year.
annual amount?
That is $150,000, I believe, Bill. Yeah, Dresden School District, that's the $100,000 a year over 20 years. That will be paid off in 23-24. And then tonight we'll be talking about the bridge bond. So that will be a new bond that we're taking on, but obviously a smaller amount of money in payment. And then the transfer, the projections reflect the transfer amounts that we've talked about through the capital improvement program. Rooms and meals tax is a little bit of good news, which is unusual coming from the state of New Hampshire, although it may only be good for 2 years. The legislature voted with the governor's approval to increase the allocation of rooms and meals tax to municipalities in New Hampshire for the upcoming 2 years. They're also lowering the rooms and meals tax by 0.5%, which is somehow they think that's going to generate more tourism activity. I don't know when the last time was that I thought about, am I going to go to Maine? Oh, wait, 0.5% decrease in the rooms and meals tax. Yes, I think I'll go, but they seem to think that that makes a difference in terms of the increase in tourism activity. But they did decide to increase, and our increase is almost $200,000, our rooms and meals tax revenue each year for the next 2 years.
And the governor's council approved that too.
Right.
Okay.
But if you recall, in this year's budget, we lost an allocation of capital improvement or capital funds from the state of New Hampshire that they awarded in the form of essentially highway funds for 2 years and then took it away from us. So it feels to me like I've always called this sort of hush money. And the rooms and meals tax payment, I fear is only going to last for 2 years unless we see a significant change in the legislative makeup in Concord. So it'll be nice while it lasts. I don't want to build any expectation into the 5-year projections. And what we really should do is think about how we want to allocate that money for one-time expenditures and not support ongoing costs, because I don't think it's going to last. It will be nice next year's budget, but we'll only enjoy it for 2 years. Motor vehicle registration fees down just a little bit off of this time last year, which is surprising to me. Sales are very robust, but people can't get cars.
Yeah.
So I would have expected there might have been more of a reduction in revenue, simply not because people don't want to buy a car, but they can't find the inventory. But as of Friday, we were just as smidge
I had about 21,000
under from this time, this very same date last year. So
On a total
out of a total motor vehicle revenue of,
last year, November 1st was 105,000. Oh no, wait a minute, that's been, sorry.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm thinking, wow, that's really low.
yeah.
I don't have the exact number. I can get it.
Yeah,
It's on the graph.
it is on the graph that we
Million,
distributed to you.
1,000,005, 1,006.
Right, so we're just a tiny bit off, but we're assuming status quo on motor vehicle registration revenue. We hope we're correct there. Building permit, now this is an interesting, and Joanna can probably relate to this even more so than I can. The college had urged us to throttle back our projections on building permit revenue starting in this current fiscal year, because the anticipation was that with the completion of the new engineering building and the Irving Institute, that there would be a throttling back in the amount of construction activity the college would engage in. However, that was before the college made some decisions to move forward in a brisker fashion on some of the dormitories renovation and expansion. So we're still going to be conservative when we bring our revenue estimates to the board for building permit revenue. And we didn't make a substantial increase projection in that revenue going out 5 years, but that could prove to be better than we think it is if the college does in fact move forward with some fairly aggressive construction of dormitories to add to the student percentage, a number of beds on campus. And so just know that that's one of those major areas of question. And then short-term interest, our short-term interest is coming back just a little bit. Remember, it used to be quite a mainstay of our revenue at $350,000 a year. Then it plummeted to nearly nothing because of the what was going on with the Fed rate. We're projecting a slight increase, but nothing overly dramatic because we just have no sense of where we're headed with interest rates going forward. So it's difficult to pin that down. And no changes really in the water utility fund, in other revenues, net assessed valuation. I just gave you that number, and obviously that factors in significantly into the discussions going forward. And so now I think, Tina, if you want to just walk the board through the charts, the graphs, and the 5-year projections that we handed out to the board in the packets, that would probably be the best way to sort of organize the discussion. Peter, does that make sense?
I have extra packets too that do have the.
David, you got one?
Yeah.
Maybe we get this.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Here, give that to me, David.
Starts the back. Everybody got them? So we actually just finished up, the audit of 21. I don't have numbers yet, and the numbers that I will show tonight, the unassigned fund balance. I obtained from the auditors, that they are officially the unaudited
Numbers
numbers.
still to be finalized, in other words.
Right. So this chart is just a comparison of fiscal year 21 and what was budgeted for 22. So it goes down through these revenues from the general fund and expenses, pretty much comparable. We were down quite a bit in the expenses in the general fund, 21%.
Before we jump into the detail,
Yeah.
could you help me explain the percentages on the right side?
The percent of budget numbers,
Yeah.
Peter,
That is what remains.
what we still have to generate. So what that number is not, Peter, is the percentage we generated already. It's the percentage that still needs to be generated to meet our targets.
I would prefer next year to have them
Flip
reverse and show the percent. that
generated.
is
For
left.
sure.
Right.
This is a holdover from Betsy's approach, so I must admit, I looked at it too and thought, oh, so I'm doing the math in my head, right?
Yeah.
To say, to sort of come up with, okay, so that means we've generated 30% so far out of 100%. So if it's easier for the board for us to do percentage generated year to date as a percentage of the total still to be generated, we can just flip that calculation.
Right, I find it easier the other way around.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Yes. Fire fund. That pretty much, you run in at what it should, 1% over on expenses. Under expenses. Yeah,
So there's reason that, for example, under property taxes, that we have 0, is because we haven't received our first tax.
Correct.
payments.
that's
We
correct.
haven't set the bills out yet, right,
Okay, thank you.
right.
We also have the water fund. Water reclamation, and you guys can stop me if you have any questions. Water reclamation, we have the ambulance fund.
So this is as of what date? So
This was as of,
what percentage of the year have we been through?
the first, basically about the first quarter and halfway through October.
Right,
Okay,
so
basically
October
it's-
15th.
We've been through 25% of the year plus a little.
Right.
So I just want to pause for a minute on the parking fund, because I know that this has been but an issue. But I have to say that I ran some numbers, and as of the end of October, parking revenues are about 170,000 over what they were at this time last year. So,
How's that compared to budget? And we over, last year we took a hit because we
Right,
obviously
right,
didn't
right.
anticipate it, but we had budgeted for lower revenues. So if I look at this numbers, I gotta do the backup, 66 is 33. So 25% of it through the year, and we received 33% of the charges.
So we're a little ahead,
right.
a little
like
ahead,
you
right.
said.
And finding that our meter inventory is, last month, we were at almost 70% of previous history of meter utilization, Peter, and that number continues to climb. So we're seeing very good sort of meter utilization recovery in the parking fund. I've asked Jeff to be sure, we're looking at having Jeff come in and do kind of a mid-year update for the board, so you can get a feel for where he's seeing it right now in terms of the utilization trends in addition to the financials, but we're well on the road toward bouncing back.
But the basic news is, while last year you saw the parking fund going into the abyss deeply, this year we're not.
Correct.
Correct.
Based upon this year's budgeted revenues
Right,
from the parking
right,
fund,
we're looking at.
for the
this.
parking fund.
And
Okay,
we're
thank you.
keeping fingers crossed a little bit more.
Yep.
I didn't see anywhere on here where we're particularly off of budget or below budget. Is that correct?
That's
Correct.
Okay, so we're hanging in. With all that uncertainty, the last year's budget, we're hanging in. Good. Okay, thank you.
So the rest of these charge, you have a 3-month treasury rate. As you can see, took a little bit of a dive.
Before we go any further, any questions, finance committee, on this part of the presentation?
On the parking fund.
Mhm.
Carrie, you have to come from the mic to the public has to hear you.
Kari asked this. I don't know.
Yeah, that's easier, Kari, don't worry.
So Kari asked me, the finance committee, I was just, while we were on the parking fund, under revenues, other revenues and transfers, and there's $146,000. So is that from an undesignated fund balance, and is that why we are seeing, you know, we were just saying that, hey, we're on budget, but is it due to the fact that we're drawing out of undesignated fund balance from somewhere, or what is that other revenue transfers in?
I don't know what pieces are in that number, Kari. I'm looking at Tina, she may not know yet either.
Right.
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, I asked that into the question, but I brought my last year's annual report, and I'm thinking that while we are thinking that this is looking pretty good, we need to remind ourselves that we may be, you know, drawing on a rainy day fund.
But that may be CIP transfer in for our meter project, so
Yeah, that
that's,
could be that
Yes,
too,
no.
so that's what I was asking.
Yep,
and
yep.
It's just, if there is some of that transfer from an undesignated amount, we just need to keep that, you know, in mind, that was a little extra boost that the fund may have gotten, but I don't know the answer.
right.
Thank you.
Yes, no, I believe that you're right, that's CIP for the meters.
Yep. Okay, so we were on
Okay,
treasury rates.
treasury rates,
Yeah, I know.
kind of up there.
I know.
Maybe back to where we were, what, 07?
Yes, and you know, in many ways, that's not surprising, right? Given what's going on with the
At least it's
economy.
not negative.
No, it's not.
We're not paying them to take our cash.
So unemployment rates,
Climbing back up.
we can, yes, continue to see those climbing back up, and it, I have to say that I just think it's amazing though, because everywhere you go has a help wanted sign. You know, and I feel bad for the businesses that, you know, we've got quite a few in Hanover that have to close a couple days a week because they just don't have the help. Oh, but that is the Hanover annual wages, which actually is up significantly.
And that, part of that may be just labor shortages, right? So that's putting sort of an upward pressure on hourly rates, but
Oh, definitely.
in terms of what just our restaurants are having to pay to attract staff and retailers.
Who gathers this information? I'm trying, what's the source for this chart?
It's the New Hampshire
Yeah.
Employment Security staff,
The website's right there, Bill.
right,
Yeah,
NHES.
Yeah.
I'm reading it, but I couldn't interpret
It's the
it.
New Hampshire Employment Security department within the state of New Hampshire.
So statistically, we're comfortable that this history shows that they've been accurate?
Yeah, we've typically found their data to be very accurate.
Okay.
Employment security, yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, although they desperately need to update their their software systems. So one could argue maybe our confidence in them is misplaced, but typically we found their data to be consistent and helpful.
Well, then we have general population, which increased by 53 people. They've been pretty consistent.
Yep. Net property valuation, the next page does not reflect the
No.
new, so we didn't have time to update this bar, to add the bar for 2021, which is now gonna be 2,675, right, yeah. So we'll update that.
Yep, and we have tax lien, I apologize when I was pulling this, your tax year 2020 graphs are there. But your data just isn't available at the top. So I do have that 2020, there were only 15 parcels
Lean,
that were leaned. And it was just shy of about $150,000.
and when you look at the amount that we lean from year to year, it's pretty close to, somewhere between 150,000 and 210,000 in tax lien. So it's typically fairly consistent and very often the same properties from year to year.
Yeah, you find it's the same properties, and then when it gets the time after 3 years to come into deed,
They
then
pay
they'll
the
come in
taxes.
and they'll just pay enough back to keep them from being deeded, but still stay in the leaning process. Next one we have
Short-term interest.
short-term interest. Next we have is, this is the revenues from motor vehicle.
Building permit and related revenues. This is,
Building permits.
you see 2019 is so high, and that was just three big projects really, the Irving Institute, the new engineering building, and of several other smaller projects on campus. 2020 was at Dartmouth Hall to that. And 2021 still lower. The big question is what 2022 will look like, depending, quite frankly, on what the college does. We see that we have a pretty consistent amount of churn, what we call churn, which is non-college related construction and building permit activity from year to year. And then whatever projects the college undertakes tends to impact the height of that bar on the bar graph. But we'll continue to be conservative in our projections for next year, just to be on the safe side.
Yeah, I mean, the 2019, I mean, that's, what did
And-
they say, $250 million? I mean, that's the West End development.
Yeah, it's very unusual.
It is
very
an
unusual.
anomaly. It's
Yeah.
the greatest investment they've ever made. So.
Yeah. Yeah, nice while it lasted, but you don't want to count on it.
Next we have meals and rooms tax.
And actually, Tina, that will go based on the new, so FY 2021 is what we're getting in
Right.
this current fiscal year, but next year, we're gonna see that number go up for 2 years, likely no more than that.
I just clarify, I don't understand how the state has more money in that pot to share with the municipalities for the next 2 years based on last year, lack of tourism and the reality of the pandemic. I just don't understand the math.
Well, I'm trying to be diplomatic here.
Please
Bill.
do.
It really has nothing to do, quite frankly, with how much the state actually made in rooms and meals tax. It has everything to do with the legislature and the governor feeling some measure of guilt for what communities have been through and figuring they better find a way to free up some more money for cities and towns for one biennium. So what I'm trying to say is the state could make this happen every year.
Okay, so
They
it's just,
simply are unwilling to make us a priority.
so that just means more dollars from a smaller pot to the municipalities, but less in the pot for the state, and then they'll figure out how to fill that gap some other way.
It was, the way they filled it is with the ARPA money. So they've got enough money coming in from the feds through pandemic stimulus that they figured they have the ability to be kind to cities and towns for 2 years.
Thank you.
Remember that the state underfunds the statutory requirement for the amount of rooms and meals tax they're supposed to be sharing with cities and towns. We're
Isn't it
supposed to be
something like-
getting 40% and we don't even get 20.
I know that's the long history. That's why I'm trying to understand. All of a sudden, there's gonna be a jump out of the same pot, but it's not out of the same pot. Okay, thank you.
Let's see, Ohio Lot Grant.
And you'll notice that that number has come down somewhat, and that was a direct result of reduced travel and gasoline consumption during the pandemic. So gas tax revenues or proceeds were down because people weren't logging as many miles, they weren't commuting to work. And so we all saw a reduction in the shared revenue as a result. That's allocated based on a strict formula. And the next one, shared state revenue. That those 2 years in FY 2020 and 2021, when you see us getting a little over 40,000, that's another one of those rooms and meals tax. We'll pay the cities and towns for 2 years to be quiet. The state came up with some extra cash for us to pacify us.
So the next is just for discussion, and modeling purposes only, pretty much just reiterates anything that Julie spoke about at the beginning from her memo. So this shows a breakdown of the projected municipal tax rate. This is not from the private district school for your county. So we do see a significant drop this year. And then budgeted out, I mean, this all depends on the budget goes.
Right.
So if I remember how to read this chart,
Yeah, help us.
if all these assumptions come true, we would see a 5.94% increase in the tax rate based upon this budget we're getting ready to talk about.
Mhm.
And that would jump to, that would be 5.7 in the next year, and 3.5 in the next year, and 6 in the next year, and 6 in the next year.
If we don't change our
Based upon all
course,
if these assumptions came true,
correct,
and we just did everything, this is what the results would be. If we did nothing but what's projected here.
correct.
Right, and that's based on the Julia's memo in conjunction with mine, with how we push it out and say, okay, 4%, 2% COLA.
Right. And I assume it also implies no, when the bonds expire, that expiration is shown in this number.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons you've got the lower numbers out, a little bit
Correct.
further out, because the
Right.
bonds are expiring.
Correct.
I think
Correct.
that's
Does it have
probably
the
driving
bridge,
it.
Does not include
the bridge?
upcoming-
Yeah, it doesn't include the bridge bond.
We don't have the bridge in here yet.
Right, that's not in here yet.
My reaction to seeing this is, we've seen some of these, and in the out year, were really scary. They're 8, 9, 10%. So status quo is gonna take us off the cliff real fast, so. Although these numbers are hard, they appear manageable to me, given our history. We've had to deal with a heck of a lot worse 5-year projections than this one, which is kind of interesting.
Right, and I think in discussions, with myself and Julia, it's, to stay kind of conservative and not, because we don't know what's gonna happen.
What was the assumption again about the increase in property value just from renovations and reconstruction?
Actually, Norm had stated that previously it was 8 million every year that he was looking to add it on, and he said conservative number is 15 million.
Say again?
15 million to
Why is
increase.
that?
Increase in total assessed
Total assessed
valuation each year for the next 5 years, just based on level of construction activity, adding tax
So is
value.
that 15 million also on assumption here?
Correct.
Yes.
Whereas we previously used 8 million as our assumption, and that's the number we used when we built this year's budget, Peter.
Yep.
And the tax rate target was an $8 million number, so double, almost double what Norm had forecast a year ago.
Corey, I see you with your hand up.
I just look at my neighborhood, I'm not sure if that's even enough.
Well, just on that topic, I mean, there was once in the 2000s when we had a $50,050 million increase in
Yeah.
net assessed valuation, so there is a lot of variability. And
That's when I built my expansion.
So, you know, that really can make a huge difference. But while we're talking about looking forward on the tax rate, I was wondering what is happening with this year's setting of the tax rate? Julia mentioned that there was a 11.28% decrease from the current tax rate. So I was wondering what we are thinking people are going to be seeing in terms of an increase. We had thought that it was going to be an impact of 2.97%, you know, for any given home. Is that what we're still looking at? Where are we at?
I don't know yet, Kurt, because I've had no time today to sort of sit with Norm and react to the total net assessed valuation numbers to do that next step calculation. And so I don't know. DRA will be likely setting the tax rate, what, Tina? Maybe as early as late this coming week,
Yeah,
this
we'll
week,
get the MS1 to them
tomorrow?
I'll upload it to the site. Once they get everything in, they have all the schools, they said that we should have it within a week.
Okay.
I would think that would be, correct me if I'm wrong, that would be more driven by whether the 8 million
Correct.
projection was accurate, not how this assessment changed everything. So if the net, if we saw 8 million of improvement from renovations and new construction, then the increase should be the same because the budget's the same.
Right, but
Spending's the same.
we're actually
We don't know
seeing
what the big
15
is,
million, so that number has doubled, almost
That
doubled.
should help.
That will help dampen, right,
That
the
should help.
tax rate impact. But I have not had a chance to take a look with Norm and Tina what that net number is going to be.
Right. It was just that you had said that there would be 11.28, but maybe that.
11.28% decrease in the tax rate
Right.
from what we had projected, Kari. What I haven't done yet is to do the next calculation, which is, yeah.
Okay, and so I guess another question, so we know that the net assessed valuation number is going to change, and that can either render the tax rate even lower,
Mhm.
or it could mean that there could be a lower dependence on the undesignated fund balance. Because
Right.
You remember there that we had pegged the 370,000 to come out.
Right, Right.
And given, you know, so it could go either way, and I didn't know if there was a thought among the board which way it was gonna go, and then the other question that I just had was, I think, minors, I know it's early in the year, we just saw how, you know, we don't really know how the revenues are gonna be year long, but do we anticipate that we are going to be revising the revenue numbers at all in the tax rate setting process?
I don't anticipate that we'll be revising the revenue estimates at all. That is not, and it's not something we typically do anyway in the tax rate setting process, Kari. We're very leery of manipulating our revenue estimates this late in the game. And my assumption is that we may in fact be able to reduce the amount of undesignated fund balance that we need in tax rate setting, but until we see the MS1 completed and have a chance to take a deep breath, I can't tell you for certain.
Yeah, and then the reason why I asked about the revenues from the town is that the schools do revise, but it's primarily based on the number of
Enrollment.
students at the high school. So if they underestimated or
Right,
overestimated, they know that already.
Right, and you know, we don't tend to see that kind of swing,
No,
particularly I think overall, it's easier for us to predict our revenues than it is for the school district because we're not dealing with that major uncertainty, which is just enrollment numbers.
But so by the time you all meet again in 2 weeks, the tax rate will be known.
Right.
And you'll have a little better sense.
And tax bills should be out, right?
Yeah, in some sense for how this year's
Plays.
tax rate may impact once you, what is reasonable.
And it's
in the coming year.
exactly, and it may be that when the board next meets on the 15th, they want to wait a little bit longer before they set the tax rate target. Last year, I don't know if folks recall, but we actually didn't set our tax rate target till the first meeting in December.
Yeah.
Because we just felt the more time we can buy in the midst of that pandemic response and wait to hear what kind of rescue plan money may be available. You recall, I was the one saying, let's take as much time as we possibly can before we lock in on a tax rate target because it's a moving target at this point. So if the board wanted to wait until your first meeting in December to set your tax rate target, it's not going to hamper our internal budget development work at all. But certainly by the next time we meet and before, we'll be able to send out an update on the tax rate to everybody, board and finance committee.
Thank you.
Board, additional 2 questions on the 5-year projections or observations or questions?
In terms of the, what is it, $1.2 million that we're getting from the feds?
From the feds,
That we've
yeah.
got half
Or-
of that. Where does that fit into this equation?
So that's not reflected on the pro forma, Joanna. That essentially is grant money that doesn't need town meeting appropriation to be expended. You have already held your public hearing to accept those monies. And we have until 2024, the end of 2024 to spend that money. And if the board recalls in conversation with the finance committee, one of the potential objectives for utilization of the ARPA money, American Recovery Act money, was to use that money to replenish undesignated fund balance in the general fund and the parking fund. That's one allowable use for the ARPA monies, although it's not as straightforward as it sounds, right?
Yeah.
The other,
If that's the case, then that becomes a balance sheet issue,
Yep.
not
not an expenditure,
not a
not a
P&L issue.
budget
Okay.
expenditure issue. Obviously, the folks in Rome, Hanover are raising their hands, saying broadband, please. And one of the reasons I mentioned tonight that it's tough to project is we don't know if there's going to be broadband money available in the infrastructure bill to the extent that it's available to rural New Hampshire or not.
Yeah.
So,
So our grants don't necessarily show up in
Correct.
this 5-year projection.
Correct.
So we get a few $100,000 for,
it doesn't,
it doesn't show up.
You-
For the
and-
bike path, that doesn't show up. in there.
right,
Okay.
and we tend to call it miscellaneous revenue not anticipated because you can never count on grant money, nor should you build it into your performance,
Yep.
because it's like, it's money, it's pennies from heaven,
Mhm.
but you don't want to become dependent on it.
Okay, thank you.
So the next pages, this is your forecast.
Based on the overview we gave you at the beginning in terms of here, what are our assumptions on salaries, on benefits, on various and sundry operating costs, and in the CIP.
Pardon this one, but I'll find it.
That is,
It's very bad in these packets.
yeah, it's 2 pages from the back, Peter. The last 2 pages are your budget guidelines. So literally the packet that Tina just handed out to you, it comes after that.
Got it. Thank you.
Mhm.
And those two are your.
And, you know, it's interesting. I have often felt that One of the things Betsy and I talked about doing that we never got around to doing was to take, let's say, the 5-year projection from 2 years ago and actually build in the actuals as compared to our projections 2 years later to sort of see how close were we to tracking these in our projections. Typically, we've been conservative in our projections, but that's by design, because we want to be certain we're being prudent and not overly optimistic on the revenue side. And we've also tended to be a little conservative on our expenditures, and by that I mean we've overestimated our expenditures, but that's because we're trying to be conservative.
So, and I actually didn't get to it, the unaudited as of June 30th, 2021, unassigned fund balance, is $3,354,420.
And that's all funds
That is.
or general funds? That's all funds, I think, Tina, right?
It's all funds.
Okay.
We don't want to add more work, but this becomes more meaningful if we.
Break it out by fund?
Well, we know what it is compared to our guidelines.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just
A number.
It's just a number, correct.
You want to read it again, Tina? Card,
I did.
3 million. Oh, she's quickly writing it down.
$3,354,420.
So that's just shy of 10%,
Mhm.
right?
So the starting balance was $2,856,142. And that again is unaudited, so.
Right.
But did come from the auditors.
Which, I mean, the good news is it's
More
going in the
than-
right direction,
Yeah.
even in a bad year, right? But the question is, where are we vis-a-vis the targets? So we'll do that update as part of our budget discussions. But if you'd like, we can try and get it to you for your next meeting. Peter, would
I
that be
think we
helpful?
kind of, it's nice to have the forward projection. You kind of manage that.
Yeah, what
year to year.
we'll do, Tina, we can pull out from the budget document, we do a sort of a fund by fund breakout of the projected fund balance. So we'll just do a
I think-
unaudited update fund by fund.
Yeah, I think going out too many years
Yeah.
is an too.
Yeah,
It's academic.
yeah.
All right.
It's spinning. Thank you.
Finance. Any additional questions or observations? Okay, so we'll be back here in a couple of weeks talking about guidelines.
Yep. And
Thank you.
just stay here, Tina,
Welcome
because
to the
next is
process.
bridge bond, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And
Don't
just,
move.
Tina, as you're going through all of this, we're not afraid of change.
Okay,
So if you see things you think we're doing that don't make any sense, or you have ideas about how to do it a little differently, feel free.
Thank you. Yes, and I have a meeting with all the department heads prior to budget, just to kind of get a feel for the departments.
Yeah.
What works, what doesn't work, and I think there might be a couple little changes.
Good. So we're gonna build some, replace some bridges here?
Yeah,
Good.
and Tina's gonna walk you through, I think it's been an interesting process with great help from Divine Moment.
It actually has. So the easy thing to do with the bond is to just go with the bond bank, which I do have the application into the bond bank if we choose to go that route. In the back of your packet, you have, I had them push it out 10 years, and I also had them push it out 20 years. My opinion is that I would go now with a 10. You get a little better interest rate if you push it out 20, but my feeling is that what you save in principal, you need to go with what you pay in interest. We also did an RFP and sent it out to about 20 financial institutions throughout the state. We got 3 bids back.
Wow.
Yeah,
Why so few?
I-
Just stuff.
yeah,
Well, and especially in a state like New Hampshire, quite frankly, I think a lot of the banks for smaller communities, just haven't chosen to compete with the bond bank, right? I mean, it's a book of business they've chosen not to pursue in it with any sort of rigor. I don't know that I don't know that I was expecting more than that, Tina, in terms of
I
responses.
really wasn't, I wouldn't be surprised, that's all we got. And the other kind of caveat that we threw in there was we asked them to give us a 1-year line of credit. And then roll it into a 9-year bond. So DPW is currently working on the bridges, and I have a timeline for that, so, it's kind of wait to see where interest rates fell and things like that. So we do have the option with, if you choose to go with a local institution.
And how are the interest rates holding up, holding down? If we entered this round, which would be December, I think.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
January.
actually with the three bids that we got, there was one that was out there, it was at 2.25%. It didn't really give us a lot of options. The bond bank is coming in with you there like
Looks like too.
2%
Yep.
for a 10-year. Mass Bond Bank actually came in at 2.04. And
With a line of credit.
Yeah,
with a line of credit, and we had another bank that came in at 2.09. With Vanessa from Pine Millimette, she went through all of the applications. And Mascoma was actually the only one that checked all the boxes. There were some unknowns with a couple of the other banks. The other thing with going locally is we do have the option to prepay. So if we lock in with the bond bank, that's wonderful. We have 2 payments a year.
But you can't prepay, right?
We can't prepay.
Can't pay it down if you have an opportunity or a windfall that makes you decide it's worth it to pay it off prematurely or early.
so who makes these decisions?
Well, typically we do, but the discussion had
We
been,
meaning
hey,
who?
let's
Like
put
us?
this, right, and the finance
Okay.
committee had suggested this as well. Let's put this out to bid and see
Yeah.
what we get in terms of competitive solicitations. And I think in talking about this with Tina, makes sense that we go with Mascoma. A 1st-year line of credit, the interest rate is very competitive with the bond bank. We have enhanced flexibility. And in terms of prepayment or premature early payment off if we choose to. And it seemed to us, it made sense to stay local.
What do our finance committee go, since you guys like do this stuff? That's your job, right? Sorry, Peter. Is that okay?
So what's the 20-year bid?
Great.
High.
Yeah.
So if you get the line.
Mac, you need to introduce
Oh,
yourself to
I'm
the
Matt
public.
Gardner. I'm a member of the Hanover Finance Committee, resident. With the line of credit, you lock in the rate today, even though you're not taking the money down for a year. I have no confidence that a year from now,
Yeah,
that these rates are going to be available.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
if it was me, and I was financing an asset.
You'd lock it in
supposed to last
today.
For 40 years.
Yeah.
I would take 20-year money. I take the cheapest, I take the cheapest money I could get, and the 10 is cheaper. I
Right.
get that.
Right.
Prepayment is interesting, but when was the last time this town prepaid a bond?
We did,
And why would you repay 2% money?
right,
Like,
Well, that's the reason why you wouldn't. prepay.
right,
Right, it's likely to be the cheapest financing you got on your balance sheet. So
Right, right.
the Land of uses for capital, it would seem to me, and especially if interest rates rise, you're probably gonna be running more in the cash that you're sitting around with than you're gonna be paying on.
in the
bond.
in the payoff.
So it's,
Right, the only thing that I was thinking of is with the ARPA funds that we received. These bridge, it does fall under the infrastructure. So you're capped at what you can use the ARPA funds for. So my thought was that with broadband or whatever, if we had some of that money left over, we have to use it by a certain date.
I guess that might be the only, if we had nothing better to do with the money,
Right.
then we pay super cheap financing. Then
So let's talk about the process a little bit here. I mean, I think what we're getting at is as you finalize, as you come to a choices, A or B or C, then I think you need to involve the finance committee and we need to involve this board in that decision.
Right.
Oh, absolutely, we have until December to.
Yeah, then we'll have time to look at
Right,
the
we'll
options.
bond that.
Exactly.
The line of credit is good only if you can know, I mean, they'll probably buy futures to lock it, in effect, lock in the rate. That typically comes with a cost, it may be worth it, but, because otherwise you gotta take down all the money up front if you
Right.
haven't spent it.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't go make it on, if it was me.
Yeah.
on rate
Yep,
a year from now.
right.
Okay, but excuse me. I wouldn't go naked on a, what does that mean? I'm sorry.
I wouldn't take, interest rate risk.
Okay, I understand
I
that.
wouldn't basically roll the dice
Okay.
and say, well, we'll set it a year from now.
Right,
No.
Right.
Yeah.
Now and see what it is a year from now. That's
Yeah,
what-
I got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's
I
advising to lock
I don't
it.
have the lingo. I'm just not there yet. I'm working. I'm learning that.
All right.
Sorry. So, Kari asked us again, one other aspect of our conversation last spring was the 10 versus 20 years. And I guess it wasn't so much a financial thing, but it was just that it seemed that it made sense. Whereas a 75-year
Asset.
investment to spread it out over, 20 cohorts of taxpayers. And otherwise, if it's 10 and you are saving, over 10 years pre-saving for it, then it sort of seemed like we weren't really, changing the paradigm at all by bonding in terms of what made sense for every cohort.
Yeah, I think, and this is the trade-off we were wrestling with, Kari, is the 10 versus 20, the interest rate on 20 years versus the interest rate on 10, and is it worth it to pay that much more
Right.
in?
And so, again, you have to look at the big, look at the whole thing, but that was part of the conversation, so I just.
Yes.
Want that to be swept under the rug without.
Absolutely.
I can't Just, this is just saying, that's not as important as.
Yep.
tax.
I hear you.
Also,
At the time, the bill curve was completely flat.
I know it was, yeah,
About 30 year money for the same price.
right. It's different now, but yes, then back in May, it was, or July, yeah.
And I think bridges are only have a lifespan of about 30+ years.
but one other question, is there any difference on the balance sheet, between having a bond versus a long-term debt to a bank? Is there any difference there? Is that 6 of one, half dozen of the other?
Same, yeah.
So one doesn't look better to the auditors or to anybody else. Okay.
And what about the difference? Like, the New Hampshire Bond Bank is in Concord and it's a state bank. Mascoma is in our town.
Right.
It's like pros and cons there. Investing
The way I look at
local
it is,
or,
Mascoma, and Citizen, those are banks that we use. So the town's money is sitting in their bank
Yeah.
anyway. So I don't think that, and we did put it out to every single,
yeah, 20.
yeah.
That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So when would, in timeline, we would then kind of get the final recommendations or the options?
Well, I think we're at the final recommendation. That's just, you look at using Mascoma. But if the board wants to have a conversation at the finance committee and back at the select
I
board.
don't, do I have those numbers, the ones you just,
Yeah, it's in this.
Yes. it's in
Okay.
the-
okay, so I'll look at that.
Take a look and I can put it back on your agenda for the 15th, or we can take to the finance committee meeting in
Yeah, and we have until December to make the.
There's
decision
time.
on
We-
it,
we're-
so
we're
we
simply-
have a month where, yeah.
Okay, so I'll find it here and then. we can
Yeah, here's the
put it on our
benefit of
agenda for
your
the next meeting.
input. Yep.
And hopefully the finance committee will have a chance to make a recommendation.
When does the finance committee next meet?
Either next Monday or the 22nd.
Okay.
Seeing whether,
What we were doing tonight sort of dictates when you next meet.
yes.
Okay.
So if we meet on the 15th, could we have their feedback for that meeting? I mean, is that something that we could ask them to do for us? Not that,
Does that work for the finance committee to sort of take this up so the board has your thinking for their meeting on the 15th?
Yes, as long as we have a quorum in person. and
Sure,
all
sure.
that,
Yep.
Okay,
thoughts, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Excellent.
Oh, we're on item number 4.
Let's not rush it.
Only 9 more to go.
Let's not rush it.
No. You've gotten through the most
Thank you, guys.
significant
Thank
and
you.
weighty of your matters for the evening, guys. You should be able to breeze through the other.
Thank you,
things, too.
Tina.
You're welcome, Julie.
No, you're all
Thank you,
set, Tina. Thank you.
All right, we're up to number 4.
This is just approval of Donna Stender as to be appointed as our municipal agent with yeah.
I move we appoint. Approve. Donna Stender.
And
This is confusing.
I actually may have another one coming on.
Melissa.
Because, yes.
Yep.
Melissa Hano has come back to the employment at Hanover.
I told the board about that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so she is the more senior clerk, so I will be bringing in to,
So do you
Appoint
want-
her.
do
Can you
want us to
just
take some
include that
motion
now?
tonight?
Can we go ahead and make that recommendation tonight?
you can, and I'll just read.
Yeah,
the letter. That would be
so-
Okay, what would the recommendation sound
The-
like in terms of the vote?
The recommendation would sound like approval of the New Hampshire Department of Safety appointment of Donna J. Stender, Deputy Tax Collector and Assistant Town Clerk as Town of Hanover Municipal Agent, and Melissa Hano
Yeah, who is tax collector associate town clerk,
as Town of Hanover Municipal Agent.
yes.
I just moved that.
And I just
Well
second
done.
that.
Wait, and I guess I'm confused by the word approval of, but that's okay. We're
Well,
approving something what somebody else did?
no, you're
We're
simply
moving that-
authorizing, the submittal to the state of New Hampshire of these two individuals as municipal agents.
Okay, is there a better word than approval? Or-
Authorize. It doesn't matter, Peter. I mean,
Okay,
it,
we authorize the appointment of blah, blah, blah. for
Correct.
These positions.
right.
Great. Further questions?
Thank you.
Good night,
Thanks.
Tina.
Thanks, Tina.
All
So
those in favor, any other comments? Yes, questions? Aye, we just voted on it. Aye, well done, well done.
So Melissa Hano and Donna Stender are now authorized appointments by the state of New Hampshire to be Town of Hanover municipal agents, which means that they are certified to issue motor vehicle registrations.
That's
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then, so that's number 4, well done. So we've discussed, I move that we approve the labor grade modification from grade 17 to 19 for human resources coordinator job title.
Second.
For the viewing public, this was discussed in non-public session as a personnel issue, and we understand the change for the grade increase due to additional responsibilities
Of the individual.
of the individual. So I've moved it. Was it seconded? Great job, those.
Yeah.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Meeting schedule for 2022. Can't believe this.
Well, and we set these, but we never hold firm to this schedule because your lives change, our needs change, things become more pressing, or we drop meetings because we don't have enough business to make up a meeting. So what's significant is that we're working to avoid conflicting holidays here. Typically, you meet on the 1st and 3rd Mondays of the month, but in the case of January, the New Year's holiday falls on that Monday, the 3rd. So we bumped the meeting to the 10th and therefore to the 24th, also to avoid Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a holiday in January. February, we will revert back to your 1st and 3rd, typically 1st and 3rd, but because President's Day falls on the 3rd, you're meeting on the 1st and the 4th Monday.
Let's slow down. We've had
Sorry.
January. Anybody have any questions or about January?
All good.
Looking good.
Second and
I think you're up to
fourth
February now, Julie.
Yep. So
Anybody-
February, we got you on the
questions
1st and the 4th Mondays, Peter, because of President's Day.
Yep. Okay.
That starts our deep dive into budget hearings.
And what we've done, Joanna, is put your budget hearings on, your first budget meeting would be the 28th. Monday, the 28th of February, last day of the month. And then Tuesday and Wednesday,
Wait,
March.
Okay, so the budgeting starts on February 28th.
Which is a Monday, correct?
And I flip the page over.
And then you
Table
get-
is wrong.
March 2nd, March 1st and March 2nd.
Okay.
Would be your next two budget meeting nights.
Yep.
And we always schedule a fourth if necessary, but we haven't used that in ages.
Yep.
Then we have you meeting on the 7th and the 21st. That's always a tricky month, so who
That's
knows?
fine.
Yeah, that works. Okay.
Yeah, but we might not meet on the 7th after doing.
We might
3 or
not meet
4
on the
days
7th
the
after
week
your budget
prior.
meetings the week prior, so I think it's probably safe to say you'll be meeting only on the 21st in
Probably,
March,
yeah.
Which will be okay.
okay? April, you're back to your first and third Mondays there with the 4th and the 18th,
Just so you know, Julie, I'm planning to be away the week of the 11th.
okay,
That's
of
works out.
April, okay.
That's okay.
Then May, you're back to the first and third Mondays, the 2nd and 16th. Town meeting is on Tuesday, May 10th. So the 16th would be your organizational meeting of the select board. And then June, still first and third with the 6th and the 20th of June. July bumps you to the 2nd and the 4th Mondays because the first Monday is the 4th of July holiday. August, we've got you on the 2nd and the 4th, and that is because we're trying to avoid back-to-back select board meetings since you're meeting on July 25th. Remember, we typically cancel one of the meetings in either July or August, if not both July and August. It just depends on what we've got for the board to do. Then September, you're shifting to the 2nd and 4th because Labor Day is the first Monday in September. October, you're back to the 1st and 3rd Mondays because of no conflicting holiday.
Back to back, the 26th.
I know, and the only reason there is that October, you tend to get busy with just what we're doing tonight, Nancy.
Right.
And because November goes back to the 1st and 3rd again to avoid, although Thanksgiving is happening early next year, but earlier. And then December 1st and 3rd again.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good.
it might work.
Knowing, always subject to change.
We know it won't work. We just don't know how yet.
Right,
It won't work. You're right.
We know it won't work.
It won't work.
right.
But we just don't know how it won't work.
Adopted as proposed for now, but we know it's never set in stone.
Okay, the next item is, I move that we accept the donation to the Hanover Police Department and Hanover Fire Department.
$25 for each, a very generous donation from the Jayantis.
Good. And how we-
Second that.
Yes. Thank you very much. How do you pronounce their names? I don't want to
I
mispronounce
believe
it.
it's Jayanti.
Thank you. And this is not the first time we've received such. a
No,
nice
it's not. They do this every year. It's very kind.
gift. So I moved it, somebody seconded it, I'm sure Bill did. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Oh, I love all these banners. I'm so glad to see that Christmas Revels is.
Christmas Revels, we've got, it's active, if the level of banner interest is any indication of a return to normal, then things are getting back to normal, because we've had plenty of banner activity going on in our office.
So I move that we approve the banner request from the Christmas Revels, Martin Luther King Jr. celebration and the Prouty as presented.
I'll second that.
The Prouty one was extended, but we understand that if others come in, they'll be bumped a little bit.
Correct, yep.
Okay, any other further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Minutes. Fine. August 4.
I'll move that we approve the minutes as presented for August 4th, 2021.
I'll second that.
It's our emergency meeting for masks.
It lasted longer than it should have.
Well, we asked for a medical discussion by our medical official on the board.
Right.
There you go.
Athos
It
provided us.
looks like I was verbose. wasn't
You
I?
were.
Dr. Rossius spoke.
Okay.
We
You should be in
listened.
this position.
Not hold back. I retract my previous statement.
Did not hold back.
No.
No, I was feeling pretty.
Yet.
beat up.
Okay.
I was feeling pretty beat up then.
So all those, looks like everybody attended either remotely or in person, so we're all eligible to vote. Any other additions, deletions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
I,
Next up is September 6th. All right,
16.
September 16th. Yeah.
September 16th, right?
I move the acceptance of the September, was I here at this meeting?
Yeah. You were.
Athos was-
Athos was
Athos
absent.
was-
I abstain.
Oh, we have some.
I know.
I'll second your motion,
All right.
Peter.
I didn't have any additions or corrections. Anybody else have any? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
I,
Okay.
Abstain.
Sorry, October 4th.
I'll move
Go, baby.
the October 4 minutes to be approved. Because we have two people.
Right.
missing, So
Peter and Athos
Nancy?
were absent.
I'll,
Nancy,
Nancy.
second it?
You wanna get together and object to this?
Second. All right, so Joanna, Nancy, and Bill were present.
Yep.
Athos and Peter were
Not-
Absent.
I was busy.
any, just.
You're allowed
just
to miss
stating
the
the
meeting.
facts, stating the facts, don't get excited. Any changes? All those in favor?
I,
So,
That was a really important meeting. You guys picked up $1,201,104.
we did.
So maybe I should skip all the meetings.
There you go.
If that's the revenue.
And Peter was sick with the cold, which is still causing him to cough. And you
So I
were
s-
hung up in the ICU,
so I
so.
assume the record would show that Athos and Peter abstained
Right.
on the vote,
We did.
just trying to move us,
But congratulated you on the revenue.
yeah.
All right. Administrative report. Julia, anything new?
Uh, Not that I can think of. It's been very busy, but it's most of what has been shared tonight has been what's consumed our time. As I said, we are tracking federal legislation very closely to see what may happen on the funding side. But other than that, no additional reports. I do need to know who's available tomorrow. It's gonna be in the afternoon though, Joanna, not in the morning.
I'm around.
To sign an MS1. Norm can come find you to,
I can come to the office.
okay, so Bill,
What time?
Nancy, and Joanna, are you
I am.
findable if I text you?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
$2:00.
right,
I'm working from home tomorrow with, yeah. so-
okay, and Nancy
Oh, we
and
can
Bill
trust
will just reach out to you?
We have the trust that meeting tomorrow.
We do at 4:00.
I can actually make it.
Okay, all right, so Athos can be here at 4, because I will send you a Zoom link. You know, Rick Mills can't make it, but, and so
We can't make it tomorrow?
he's gonna Zoom in.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just got a very tight schedule, but, with back-to-back meetings, so rather than the
So I'm physically here at 4:00.
at 4:00. So we've got Peter and Athos physically here at 4:00. Nancy, Bill, Joanna will reach out and see who we can
So you wanna
find.
Just do it at 4:00? Is that
Yeah.
what I told them?
Yeah,
want to just arrive at town hall.
Sure. that'd be great.
All right, so then Nancy's got it, I'll be her backup if something. comes
That'd be
up.
great.
Okay.
Unless you hear from me, show up here at 4 to sign the MS1.
So you don't need me then.
So I don't need you, Joanna, unless you hear from me.
Julia, you forgot one pretty
Pretty
important thing
significant
that happened
minute.
this week.
Not everyone reads the value.
It just happens, once every 25 years. Every quarter
That's
century.
part of the reason I've been so busy is it's been a flurry of communication over my decision to retire at the sometime after town meeting, and that is because I want to wait until you all have hired a successor and that person can be in place.
Well, that's not a high motivator for us, Julia. No, that's not.
Several people did reach out to me to say, don't make that promise, Julia, just tell them you're gone the day after town meeting and be done with it, but I promised the staff, including department head team, that I would not leave them hanging. And I, quite frankly, I have no, it's not like I have a plan to be, on a plane to some foreign.
I don't know, Martha's Vineyard's pretty nice
Yeah,
today.
yeah. But not in the summertime, that's a fall.
But May,
That's
yeah.
a fall
Yep.
venue, so, yes, so it was 25 years in August. It will be 26 years next August, and I'll be 65 in about 5 weeks, so it seemed like the right time to hang up my skates and take a little bit of a sabbatical. And ultimately, I still have some things I'd like to be able to do, but they won't be involved at the local government level. I've had lots of communication from people since I made the announcement on Thursday. It's been lovely to feel appreciated, and there has been no lack of appreciation expressed from all sorts of folks, which is really nice. And it's part of the reason I've been here for 25 plus years, is just because of the quality of our citizenry, both in Hanover and in the region at the state level. Small state, close knit, great people.
Well, we look forward to celebrating your 25 years. And for the town, we've of course been aware of this for some time. And I think this was maybe the least kept secret in the town of Hanover for a long time. But the board has asked Bill Garrity to lead the search because of his background in exactly doing this. So Bill, you want to give us a quick update on where we are now?
So in anticipation of the announcement on Thursday, the select board interviewed 3 search firms. We decided we want to use a search firm for a national search. We have identified a particular firm. I anticipate that the contract will be signed with that firm in the next week or so. And then we would announce who that partner will be, because it is a partnership. And the late November, early December, we will be doing some visible action steps, which would include having a survey available to anyone who would like to participate online, to complete a questionnaire, to give us input on what their thoughts would be for the next manager. We'll be having our search partner coming to town to meet with the department heads, select board members, and a cross-section of people who've been involved in the town in some focus groups, just to help the search consultant understand our needs. We anticipate probably a quiet phase at the end of December because the holiday schedule. And then come January, we'll officially announce the opening and solicit candidates. The process will continue. The great position that we're in is we have some flexibility with Julia's flexibility. So therefore, we'd like to move it along at a reasonable pace, but it's going to be a conclusion after a first round, a second round interviews, et cetera, somewhere in, we'll call it the springtime. And I always have a hard time defining spring in New Hampshire and Vermont. But so that means to me a March, probably more likely April to come to a conclusion. But it's flexible and we'll see as we move it forward.
Okay. We'll start. Any other additional select board report?
No.
And I have none. Nothing to report.
Nothing to report.
Okay. And the other business to come before the meeting. David.
Is there any time for public comment?
We usually do at the beginning, but you're welcome to come up and speak.
Thank you. I didn't know the other person nominated a lot of times. I just had a call. I'll make it very quick. I know it's late. Congratulations on your 25 years. I was actually gonna.
David, you need to introduce yourself just because you're on public.
My name is David Millman. I'm a resident of Hanover and a member of the Dartmouth Student Assembly. I was going to ask about the town manager search and
ways that the public would be involved, and so I'm glad to hear that process is going to involve soliciting information from the community, and I'm willing to help out if there's any information that you all need from the student community, whether it's needs or opinions on that as well. Another thing that I wanted to ask about was, or I guess it's not, I guess just comment about was, in September, there was a discussion in the select board meeting. The CATV reporting wasn't available, but so I don't know the specifics of it, but it was talking about the rental ordinance and inspections. And I know talking to students who live off campus, it's a historical problem that some of the buildings are in worse shape, and inspections are on top of that. So if there's any ways to collaborate in terms of pushing the college to maybe, I know that other colleges have recommendations, or they enforce some restrictions on off-campus housing. So if there's anything that the student assembly can do to help with making those inspections and making those properties up to code, to indicate my willingness to help out with that. I did have I was curious whether the ARPA funding potentially could be, I'm not sure of the specifics on, and I think it's very vague, what it could be used on, but potentially for advanced transit, expanding that. I know that would fall under the improving quality of life, and like running on weekends has been a problem, or past into the night would help, not only the community, but also help in a way try to pop the darkness bubble in terms of allowing people to explore the community when they actually can. And then the last point was about masking, about the ordinance. The Pfizer vaccine was approved for I think is it 5 to 12?
12, right.
So and I think that was the primary motivator in the original masking, and I know there's the at a previous meeting it was discussed that there were some recommendations in the state of New Hampshire whether those were increasing or not, but I was also curious if there's a timeline for how long the masking ordinance will stay on to.
So we've talked with both the college and the school district, David, about this. And we've also had a fair number of people stop in just to kind of get an update on where we think we might go with masks and what we would recommend to the select board. I think we've all decided that it makes sense to wait until the immunization for the youngest age group of currently eligible is well underway. We're not there yet. But also watching the New Hampshire numbers, which are concerning because they're up, right?
Yes, they are.
Athos can speak to that. As are the breakthrough infection rates up. So what I've been saying to folks is I suspect nothing will happen this fall term in terms of a change. We want to wait to see once Dartmouth students go home, once our school district sees that vaccinations are well underway, and we assess the statewide numbers before we arrive at a decision for later in the winter. From where I sit, if the numbers in New Hampshire came down the way they have in other states where the Delta variant tends to peak and then starts to come down, matched with a pretty high take rate of children 5 to 12 who get their shots, then you start to feel like, okay, we've done just about all we can possibly do at this point. But I think we're not there yet in terms of feeling like we've turned the corner.
Yeah, it was just approved. So.
Right, and the state, sadly, in New Hampshire, because the executive council voted not to take the $27 million in vaccination funds, we're going to be behind the 8 ball in terms of being able to coordinate the availability of vaccine. So, and we can't even get accurate data from the state website at this point because they don't have the software updated. So it's discouraging.
And the other thing which we don't know we have no information on is what's gonna happen with the flu season, since we basically skipped it last year.
Right, right.
I hope everyone has received a flu shot, because it could be a really bad year. Hopefully it won't be, but it could be.
So it's a long way of saying, we don't know yet.
What the players are, ourselves, school board,
College
college, and then the.
And
general
DH.
community,
and DH, our advisors at the DH.
Plus all the states, you know.
Yeah, we're in regular contact and continuing to monitor. But it's worrisome because the state's numbers are up.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I can also email about that, because I know there was a lot of like different things, so I can communicate that in a different way too.
Great.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
David.
Thanks, David, for coming. Really
I
appreciate
need
it.
a motion.
I move we adjourn.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, CATV.
Yeah.
Julia,
Yes.
I don't know when the last time those certificates were printed, but the Pine Knoll Cemetery
Yeah.
still says Selectman.
Oh, does it? Thank you. We'll get this.
It's beautiful. It's good